be worse than it was last year. And I think there's every chance it's going to be better. And at least 50% of the SMEs I was with this month have indicated they're actually going to be building more this year. So I think there's a lot that have decided they're going for it, with a view that they'll be selling at the latter part of this year and into spring of next year. So there seems to be, from what I've picked up in January, a good vibe, some quiet confidence in terms of the market. So that is just wonderful for me to hear, because it was pretty dreadful last year for SME house builders in particular. So positive start to the year so far. And I believe even in terms of viewings on Rightmove, there's been a significant upturn in that. So, you know, sales is a key area. So we'll have to wait and see. It's early doors, but some encouraging signs to kick us off into 2026. Before I hand over to our guest speaker, Catherine, who's kindly given up her time to speak to us all, I'd like to hand over to Anna, who is one of the team of the R&B Housebuilder Forum with my son, Aaron, and myself. We have this week going to be launching the R&B Housebuilder website. It's your website, it's not ours. We just happen to be championing it and pulling it together. We're pretty excited about it. Many of you, including John Anderson, have contributed to the logo, contributed to the words, and we want you to help us refine this. So it's nearly complete. We're going to be launching this week, and I'm absolutely delighted to have some key founding sponsors that are going to be supporting us over the next few years. We want this to be, and it is already, the largest independent forum for SME house builders. We have some 300 members, and the end of this year, we see no reason why we can't have 500. This will be an incredible voice, no matter whether you build 2 units a year or 2,000 units a year. We're giving you the same voice and noise in the industry in terms of what I'm doing as Secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group for SME House Builders, and my role, and I've just recently been appointed to the board of the Regional Building Foundation, which is a link up between the King's Foundation and the University of Built Environment, which is all about connecting legacy landowners and small enabling sites to SME house builders. So there is some great things that we're looking to do, and this forum and website that Aaron, Anna and I have pulled together with the support of the SME house builders and our founding sponsors, would love to share with you. So over to you, Anna, before we hand over to Catherine, just to give people a little teaser of what's there and the fact that they can all continue to contribute to making this the forum that they've made it so far. Over to you, Anna.
Absolutely. Thank you, Edwin. So hopefully everyone can see that I've been sharing the website. It's definitely coming together, but it is still a work in progress. So we're going to be launching it this week. You'll see here that we've kind of got the structure of the homepage, which is great. There will be some changes, and we will be asking forum members to supply, well, basically just fill in a membership form, just so that we can ensure that we've got all of the correct contact details for everyone, and we're all GDPR compliant, which is all of the joys that we have to go through to become a professional forum and organisation. So here you've got the About Us section, which kind of gives a flavour of the backstory, with a wonderful picture of the Shooting and Innovation event that we held last year.
What's cold? No, I'm only joking.
Oh, would you mind going on mute, please? Thank you. and some information on why to join the forum, a little bit of background on the founder and Aaron and myself. And then here, which is probably my favorite page, is a Meet the Members page. So basically, we've got some of the founding members here. We've got some of the just people that we've spoke to along the way. I know I've reached out to a few of you, but if you would like to have your profile on this page, please do send it through, and I'm happy to let you know the kind of information that we're looking for. You'll see here we've got John's lovely company, Alison Homes. And it's basically a profile of yourselves. It's the types of properties that you're building. There's a wonderful carousel that you can put, so you can put videos and brochures, and it's just great PR for your business, and it allows us to showcase some of the fantastic members that we've got across the forum. So if you would like to send in your contact details so that they can be here, just email me or my team or Edwin, and we can get you on there. We've also got the news page here, which is going to include all of the forums that we've held that have been recorded on YouTube. And we've also got some of the coverage that we've had in wonderful people like Show House magazine, and some of the reports that we've done. So here, this is going to be constantly updated, and we're going to be doing that as and when we need to. And then we're also going to be adding across the top here on the homepage information about our wonderful sponsors that you can see in the corner there. And we're also going to be adding a members benefits page, which will be hopefully coming in the next week. And this will include a range of discounts and wonderful opportunities that we've got from the network that we've built that are only available to forum members. So it's trying to maximize the value add for you guys. And that's what we're constantly trying to do. I don't want to take up too much time. I think is that everything, Edwin? Have I missed anything else?
No, I think that's absolutely. I think the critical thing is this forum was done for no other purpose but during COVID. And initially, I think the first call, and Mark Fitzpatrick's on the call, was more a cathartic experience because none of us knew whether we'd live, let alone our businesses. And there were 12 of us, and it literally took shape from that to a weekly forum, to Stuart Baisley kindly coming on the call, I think 5 weeks after we had a weekly call. And I think from 12, it went to 34 with Stuart. And it's just grown ever since. And we've had various guest speakers to the Bank of England, to government ministers on the call. And really, it's giving the small girl and boy SME house builder access to people they would otherwise not get access to. And collectively, it's become a huge force where we've been able to do surveys that have gone to number 10 and number 11 Downing Street. And now it's linking with the King's Foundation and what I'm doing there. So I think, we're trying to do it. It's been a long journey, but I think, this forum has been about the success of the people on this forum. So therefore, I want you to shape the website with us and make it what it is. So it's your website, not ours. We are just purely, with our founding sponsors, going to shape this to meet the needs and requirements and provide what we can to support your continued success. And I think you'll see my vision on that. I don't want to see a country when 5 national house builders are building 95% of all homes in the UK. So I'm championing the interests of SME house builders in various ways, not only in the company that I work for full time, but also with some pro bono roles with the King's Foundation and the APPG. So it's really something I'm keen to do. And I think, if we get us collectively together, no organisation, number 10, cannot ignore 500 SME house builders that are doing a survey. It becomes an incredibly powerful voice, and collectively we'll be building more than the largest volume house builder in the UK as a collective. So I think that's also a very powerful message, but we can only do that with those on the forum today. And that's why I'm looking to get it to a number that becomes significant to anyone in the industry. And I think last month, Anna, you had someone from one of the Sunday Times listening in on the call. So we'll be getting a lot of coverage from media, etc., etc. So there's some exciting stuff ahead. But on that note, I just wanted to share a little bit with you. We'll be sharing the website when it goes live with everybody. So you'll all get an email with a link to it, and it will be on, we're looking to have it on LinkedIn and bits and pieces. But if there are some SME house builders that you know that you think will benefit, then please get in contact with Anna, myself, or Marie, and we can incorporate them on there. The larger the group gets, the bigger the voice, but it's already got a pretty big voice, not because I'm on it and I know I've got a pretty big voice, but because of the number of you on the call. On that note, can I hand over to Catherine? I know you've been at the HBF a while, planning director for the HBF. We work very closely with the Home Builders Federation. You've supported us massively, and I think many of our the R&B Housebuilder Forum members, I think over 30, have now become HBF members. You do a great job for the industry, and we're very delighted to be working with you, and the fact that you're affording the time, Catherine. I think previously you did work for one of the big nationals, I believe Bellway Homes, so you've been at the sharp end of it, and now you're looking to use that knowledge to support SMEs as well as other nationals. So I'm going to hand over to your good self, Catherine, to hopefully enlighten us in terms of the planning changes, what that means, and how the SMEs can navigate themselves through sometimes what feels like a minefield sometimes in terms of delays and bits and pieces. So over to your good self.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this works. Can you all see that? Does that work? Yeah, just nod. Yep. Brilliant. Thank you, Anna. So I'm just going to run through a brief introduction of the draft MPPF. I've kept it short so that we've got quite a long time for questions, hopefully. I'm assured that you're not backwards in coming forwards. So yeah, just ask away when we get to the end of the presentation. Is it going to work? Okay, so as it has become tradition in the planning world that MHCLG like to issue us with either a draft or the full MPPF just before Christmas. They obviously think that none of us like spending time with our families. And this Christmas was no different. So 16th of December it came out, and the consultation closes on the 10th of March. MHCLG have said, so the officials have said, that they're hoping for publication before the summer recess. But I was told this week that the last MPPF consultation got 40,000 responses, so which is just remarkable. So I question whether that is possible, and also just with the local elections and everything that everybody suspects might happen with the local elections, whether there will be some sort of delay, bearing in mind how ambitious the MPPF is. If you are intending to write your own consultation response, there are 208 questions. That doesn't include the A and B questions. And also, when you go onto the website, the questions are in Word, but make sure you double check the consultation document, because that has other questions in it, which I've got a call with MHCLG today, so I'm going to draw that to their attention. And the consultation document also has a bit more detail of why some of the policies have been inserted, or why some of the stance has been changed. I've included a link there. I think Anna's going to circulate this. So I've just picked out some of the policies that I thought might be of interest to you all. And so again, some of it's pure copy and paste. So policy PM6 says that plans should not duplicate, substantively restate, or modify the content of the national decision-making policies, which, for those that are involved in plan making or promoting sites, should make local plans quicker. We know that government have set this new timetable for local plans of 30 months. If all of the development management policies are going to be included in local plans, that 30 months is just impossible. So to strip out all of that detail and rely solely on national policy should make the system less complex and more consistent across the country, which is a positive. However, you might have seen that there are, at the moment, the decision-making policies are not going to be statutory. They are only going to be in the framework, which means that they remain a material consideration rather than statute, which means that the only statutory part of the development plan is the local plan, SDSs and any neighbourhood plans. So there is a question for officers, so local authority officers, as to how confident they feel that these policies in the NPPF can be relied upon without being repeated in their local plans. Secondly, for councillors, members who want to frustrate the decision-making process, are they going to cause trouble because they're not statutory policies? There is a question in the consultation document about that. So policy PM13 talks about standards, and this, I'm sure, affects all of you in the planning applications that you prepare and submit, that different local authorities have different standards in relation to energy, embodied carbon. They go way beyond building regs in some respects, and this policy seeks to restrict local authorities' ability to do that. So it says that quantitative standards set through development plan policies should be limited to infrastructure provision, affordable housing, parking and design and placemaking. So they should not cover matters that are addressed by building regs, although there's a caveat to that, and matters relating to the construction or internal layout of buildings. And I've clarified with MHCLG that that includes energy efficiency and embodied carbon, which I wasn't sure whether it did, because we currently don't have a national standard for that. Obviously, Future Homes has been delayed, and there is no national standard for embodied carbon. So, and Michael Bingham has confirmed that, yes, it does cover that. It also covers water, except for local authorities in high water stress areas. I know from conversations with MHCLG that that is supposed to mean Cambridgeshire. I question how many local authorities will be seeking to go beyond Part G of the building regs and claim they've got high water stress. And in my consultation response, I'm asking for further detail to be included as to what evidence needs to be presented by a local authority to demonstrate high water stress. Because at the minute, I think even Leicestershire is claiming high water stress, which is not an area of the country which is known for its drought issues. So that's policy that, from my perspective, is really positive and should make things easier. Moving on to the principle or presumption. My reference here is all change, please, because we've all heard about the stations policy. But so we now have two presumptions effectively. We've got policy S4, which is development within settlements, and policy S5, which is development outside of settlements. I apologise, these are a bit wordy. So as with the current presumption, development within settlement should be approved unless the benefits of doing so would be substantially outweighed by any adverse effects. The adverse effects include some designations, which is understandable, but also failure to comply with one of the national decision-making policies which state that development proposals should be refused. I'll come back to that point. Also, draw your attention here to local green space, which is a local authority designation which carries effectively the same weight as greenbelt. So flag that. If you see that in a local plan consultation, I would urge you to make comments on it. So policy S5, principle of development outside settlements. Certain forms of development should be approved unless the benefits of doing so. So similar to S4, there is a list of 10 developments, and it includes this much talked about train stations policy, whereby if the site is within reasonable walking distance of a railway station, and it's not just train stations, which provide a high level of connectivity. High level of connectivity is 2 trains an hour in one direction or 4 trains an hour in both directions. And it's specifically the top 60 travel to work areas. So other development, which does not fall in within those categories, should only be approved in exceptional circumstances. That is an incredibly high test, and arguably is more difficult than the current MPPF. So we will be making consultation comments on that. Exceptional is not something that should be in there. Previously, it only related to Go put it in when about reviewing greenbelt boundaries, for example. And again, substantial adverse effects include where development fails to comply with policies that state that development proposals should be refused. So moving on, there are a number of policies within the draft framework that direct refusal. Some of them are standard spatial policies like flood risk, protected species, heritage, all of the things that you would expect to see. But I draw your attention to 2 policies in particular: efficient use of land, which is policy L3, and design, which is policy DP3. So I'll come on to those policies in a bit more detail, but the fact that they can direct refusal, again, in our consultation comments, we will be suggesting that that's not appropriate. Arguably, these policies, because government are striving for this rules-based approach, which, to be fair, the industry has been asking for, what it's done is taken a lot of sort of the professional judgment and planning balance out of application assessment. And I think that there is quite a significant risk that it will trip some developers up. So also, you will have heard the introduction of the medium site category. And this follows on from the consultation in spring last year, where the government consulted on a new category for between 10 and 49 dwellings on sites of up to, I think it was a hectare. So the new proposal is for a category for sites of between 10 and 49 dwellings up to a size of 2.5 hectares. So to clarify, you have to meet both. So you can't be over 49 dwellings on a site of 2.5 hectares. 49 is the cap. There is no need for a change to the development management procedure order, because so that means there's no change to regulations to bring in this new category, which is positive. However, on its own, the category doesn't really mean anything. It's intended to streamline sort of the planning system for SMEs. However, the other positives resulting from it in terms of either exemptions or easements on BNG, the applications being delegated, expansion of the permission in principle, and exemption from building safety levy, that all needs to come in as well. And without that, it's not, I don't think, going to have that much of an impact. So in relation to the housing policies, and apologies, I am rattling through this, but otherwise I could spend hours talking about the MPPF. So policy HA1, local plans and spatial development strategies required to meet their needs in full, no change there. There is an increased focus on the needs of different groups in this MPPF. So that includes older people's housing, student accommodation, development that meets the needs of community groups, affordable housing, build to rent, etc. So And there is a requirement for local authorities to include policies that meet the needs of these different groups. So they need to carry out full assessments on how much of a need there is in their local authority for, and there is a list in policy H05. H05 also states that over the plan period, development proposals must meet at least 40% M42 and M43. So again, we will be making comments on this, that firstly, over the plan period is not specific enough. You will have some applications that are 100% M42 and some that are 0. So either needs to apply to all applications or none. And secondly, having 40% M42 and M43 again isn't clear enough. M43 is much harder to deliver, and it needs to be based on sort of a local needs assessment. Positively, policy H06 now requires local authorities to allocate 10% sites on that are less than 1 hectare and 10% that are less than 2.5 hectares. You're probably familiar with this, but the current MPPF requires that that local authorities identify land, quite often they will use their windfall allowance to say that they've identified this land. So from our point of view, it's really positive that this has now been changed to allocate, and just to take complete credit for this, in the draft that I saw a week before it was published, it still said identify, and I pointed out that it should say allocate, so I'm taking credit. But something that I think will or could cause some issues is policy H05, which on sites over 150 homes, they should accommodate a mix of tenures. And that is not taken to mean private and affordable housing. So that could mean self-build, retirement housing, or build to rent. Again, policies should set that out. But from our perspective, 150 isn't a bit large enough to require that sort of mix. If you think you're a grey belt site, so you've already got 50% affordable housing, so that only leaves you with 75 units left. And then you could potentially need to carve some of that off to another type of residential use. Firstly, is there a market for another use and on only something that small? Are you going to get to anybody to take it? And so is it deliverable? Policy HO13, you may have seen the government consultation on build out rates last year, and that was had quite a negative response from the industry, but it's one of Matthew Pennycook's drivers, I suppose. He feels like he's doing a lot for the industry in the planning reform, and so the delivery he's putting on us. And he wants everybody to deliver quicker. And so there is reference to build out rates in the MPPF, and it guides local authorities to consider imposing a shorter than statutory timescale for a start on site, which is all well and good if you can get your conditions discharged and your section 278 and your section, so it's again, we will be arguing for that to be struck out. It's completely unnecessary from our perspective. I will also mention here that in the consultation document, policy H08, there is a question about whether the affordable housing should be able to be delivered as an off-site payment in lieu for medium sites. That's currently not in the wording of the draft MPPF. This is where the consultation document is slightly different. And we will be saying that, yes, that is entirely appropriate given the challenges that SMEs face in relation to registered providers and affordable housing generally. What the policy does say is that where your affordable housing is entirely policy compliant, so that means amount and tenure and mix, then a flexible approach should be given on market housing mix, which I pointed out that they probably shouldn't be getting involved in market housing mix anyway, but I was told that Matthew didn't like that response. So that's as far as we could get with that one. So coming back to two areas which I think have a chance of tripping people up and relate back to this principle of development outside of settlement boundaries. So in relation to effective use of land, which is something we've all been, working to for a long time, the Policy L1 encourages local authorities to set local density standards, including on allocated sites. So there is a potential, given that local authorities will have to allocate 10% of their sites on sites up to 1 hectare and 2.5 hectares, that they will then look to drive density on those sites. And I have concerns that doesn't necessarily relate to the location of these sites, which was potentially on the edge of settlements or in less sort of town centre locations. So policy L3 requires that development proposals within settlements contribute to an increased density in the area, and it notes that whilst character is a factor, it is not to be sort of the deciding factor when assessing density. So again, this is where there is a risk, I think, that development proposals could stir up more objection because they were driving for a higher density than the surrounding area, and it could cause more issues. The density on sites around railway stations is 40 dph and 50 dph if those are well connected. So again, there doesn't seem to have been much consideration of like the individual sites themselves, obviously because the government doesn't know them, but this drive for density, and also what does it mean in terms of design, how easy is it to accommodate 40 or 50 dph in a housing led scheme, and that's particularly when we come on to the design policies as well. But crucially, development that doesn't make an effective use of land should be refused. Therefore, you would not be successful when looking at development proposals under policy S4 or S5. So this policy is crucial. And then moving on to the design policy, proposals that are not well designed should be refused. So again, it could trip you up when you're looking at development proposals under S4 and S5. There are now 8 design qualities that are used to assess proposals, and I've listed them there, and they've all got a paragraph. They don't completely align with the recently published design PPG either, which isn't particularly helpful. And from my point of view, because design is such a subjective matter, it is just another area where you could invite objection either by members of the public or councillors, and I think that it's going to lead to quite extensive discussion with planning officers, which obviously we don't. That's what we're trying to sort of get away from. We need to shorten the process, not lengthen negotiation. So in terms of implementation, for decision making, the policies within the framework are a material consideration from the date of publication. Where development plan policies are in any way inconsistent, they should be given very limited weight. That is really positive, very bold from government. Whether it finds its way into the final version, I think is questionable. I know that lots of local authority officers and councillors are quite disgruntled by this, particularly those that have worked really hard to progress their local plan, because all of the development management policies in their local plans will effectively be carry very limited weight, most likely, once the NPPF is published. So, but I know that officials are quite enthused by this, and they think that it's a real way to sort of drive up delivery and permissions. The bad bit about this policy, about the implementation annex, is where local authorities have a 5-year land supply and 75% housing delivery test results, the most up-to-date housing figure should not be used to demonstrate unmet need for 5 years post-plan adoption. So what that means is for local authorities that have recently adopted their plan, not using the standard method, they can rely on their local plan figure for housing need, rather than having to use the standard method for a period of 5 years post-plan adoption. So in reality, there are a number of plans working their way through the system that either have to meet 80% of the standard method, or from July will have a 20% buffer. So it's not really those plans that are that much of a concern. It's the ones that got in before that have baked in their figure. And particularly obviously in areas where their figure is so much lower than the standard method. And it also just means that it's you overcomplicating the system. Again, you can't just look at a site, know that they haven't got a 5-year land supply, and that's the end of it. So again, we will be making comments on that. We've come up with some alternative wording, which might be a step too far for officials, but we'll try. Okay, so I told you it was going to be a quick canter, and I haven't by all means covered every single policy, but hopefully it just gives you a flavour of what's in there, and I'm more than happy to take questions. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Catherine, thank you so much for that. As you probably realise, this is so critical in terms of cash flow, in terms of planning resources, particularly for SME house builders. As soon as they've got something, they've got to run with it. It's costing them. And I've got quite a few people, and I think Michael Pratt from Invite Homes, your hand was up first, Mike. So over to you, Mike, to ask a question of Catherine.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much, Catherine. Not to shoot the messenger or anything. A couple of questions I've got. Is there any acknowledgement by this paper about the housing emergency? Because it doesn't seem through any of this that these changes or interventions are going to make it better, if not worse. There's too much subjectivity, especially around DP3, for example. And I guess the other one is viability, because it's something we've talked about a lot on the different forums, is that so many sites have got burdens or issues with them that meeting a lot of these requirements is going to be damn near impossible, especially with regards to the medium category, which doesn't seem to carry much weight.
So I mean, is there a recognition in the document about a housing emergency? No, but I think that the publication of the document is probably recognition in itself. What government think they're being really ambitious with the particularly the policies outside of settlements, and they think that that could have a significant impact on unlocking supply. In terms of viability, I think that the government need to do something different to the NPPF. It needs to be alongside the NPPF to directly address the issues of viability. What positively in here, by having that standards policy, means that where local authorities have gone beyond BNG, for example, beyond the 10%, that will no longer apply. They will come back down to that 10%. So, and with embodied carbon and stuff like that. So they are trying to restrict local authorities' ability to sort of go beyond, what's strictly necessary. And I think they are hoping that that will address matters of viability in part. But obviously, the industry is continuing to lobby for other changes that are needed. I mean, I guess positively in relation to the medium site category, building safety levy there's going to be an exemption to that. And that's quite easy and straightforward for government to do. So before that comes in October, those sites will be exempt.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you. Over to you, Roy. Roy Lynch. Morning, Roy.
Hi, morning. Thank you so much. I'm here on behalf of Sarah Gibson, MP. She's had a couple of questions, so that's all right. So you mentioned already that the consultation introduces the medium development category with policies aimed at streamlining. I mean, do you think that they will actually make any difference in terms of?
I think there are other things that need to come in. So the category in itself, the NPPF guides for information requirements to be proportionate to the application size. So what government are driving at with that is that you don't submit the same amount of information for 49 units as you do for 250 units, which at the moment is effectively it, which has a disproportionate impact on SMEs because of the cost of preparing an application. The requirement for local authorities to allocate smaller sites is positive, and will create a place in the local plan for those medium sites, which means that they're less reliant on going to appeal, which again disproportionately impacts on SMEs because of the cost of going to appeal is like hundreds of thousands. So that's positive. Building safety levy exemption is also positive. We're still waiting on consultation for BNG, and there needs to be regulation change for the expansion of permission in principle requirements. So there's to make the impact that it can potentially make, there are other things that need to come in. We also need to make sure that when local authorities are allowed to set their own planning fees, that the amount for medium sites or small and medium sites is proportionate to the size of the application. So yes, but no.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. And then, sorry, just one more. So it appears to provide the consultation a clearer and more positive approach to heritage-related development. But by replacing the current policies, it appears that are difficult to navigate. Do you think that that will facilitate better refurbishment, repurposing, and reuse of existing buildings?
I'm not sure I agree that it's clearer, to be honest. So I didn't touch on this because, the majority of developers probably don't come across the heritage chapter particularly often. But so in the way that the current NPPF is worded, it is clear when you're dealing with a designated heritage asset, i.e. a conservation area or a listed building, and a non-designated heritage asset, which could be something on the local list. And the current NPPF is like a step-by-step approach when assessing those buildings and assessing the impact. It's positive that we've got rid of other weighting terminology and we're just using substantial in this NPPF, but it seems to imply that the weight to be given to harm to a non-designated heritage asset is the same as a designated heritage asset, which isn't appropriate, obviously, because if the weight should be the same, then those heritage assets would be designated. So our consultation response will draw that out and ask for there to be clearer distinction between designated and non-designated assets.
That's great. Thank you so much.
We've now got the three musketeers from Glastonbury. I think I can see Luke Simmons, Mark White from Bargate, and Angus MacDonald. Which one of you three are going to be asking the question?
And it's all down to you that we're here, so thank you for that. Catherine, very useful update. Thank you. Lots of concerns really that come out of it, because I think we're offering lots of tools to the planning teams to help stop us developing rather than supporting development. But the particular area I wanted to bring up was density. That level of density just doesn't work in rural areas, and that's just going to be a fantastic opportunity for people to block planning. So I hope that there'll be some sensible balance between a more sort of city urban environment versus rural environments. And by the time you factor in public open space and ENG and all the other constraints we have, it really is a worrying set of numbers that are set out in front of us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I would say that the 40 DPH is only set out in relation to that development around railway stations, but my concern is that it will act as a guide to local authorities when they're setting their own standards.
There's a railway station near us that's got a density that's way below that, and it wouldn't be right to be putting anything like that density there. It will be wrong. It's a rural environment and next to a rural railway station, but the railway meets all the requirements that you've set out. So immediately it wouldn't work, and yet there's opportunity to expand a rural settlement around it. So I think quite damaging numbers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also what you may well find is that then you will, even if you tried to meet that density, you would conflict with the design policy. So they're policies that don't talk to each other sufficiently.
Which just gives councillors another excuse to refuse development. As there are three of us in the room, Edwin, we get more questions per camera, I think, being a subdivision of the R&B in the southwest.
Far away, Luke.
I would add that HO 13, which you suggested maybe strike out because it was encouraging more speedy delivery. I would say we'd embrace that if there was accountability given, so that Section 278, 38, all the statutory authorities were held account on a timescale to match what was being expected of development, and giving full accountability, and even drive it to a higher level, saying to councillors, if you start refusing development that is approved, which is recommended for approval and meets the criteria, you should be held account for misconduct. And if it's held up at appeal, you lose your seat, and make them accountable and make them think again. I think that everything that's been tabled today just doesn't give me comfort that when we finally get to committee, it's going to be any different than it is now.
Yeah, so I think so 2 points. HO 13, I think, I agree with you. I'm not saying that it has to be struck out because we don't want it, but at the minute I just don't think it's achievable, and what I don't want is to encourage those shorter timescales, and then because at the minute the other regimes, planning doesn't have the teeth that it needs to have to impact upon those other regimes like 278, Section 38, etc. In terms of going to committee, the National Scheme and Delegation should state that medium sites don't need to go to committee, they should be delegated. I'm not convinced that we will get that far, particularly given the Conservatives are sort of really lobbying against this. And it was their amendment that means that the National Scheme and Delegation has to go back through the Houses for further debate before the regulations are sort of published. So yeah, I can see that there are real issues. The problem with the sort of what we can do about councillors and the consequences on them I can't see government going for any further sort of consequences on local councillors. They might do after May, when the political spectrum is different, perhaps.
Well, roll on. So if we're going to go three for three then out of us, since we've got the one camera. My issue at the moment is it's yet another MPPF, which we won't get any decisions until maybe the summer. They missed the recess. What they're actually doing is killing the SME market even further, because this was being put in to help us, and actually it's hindering us. If we either just actually taken the first MPPF and done it and just all said, right, let's get on with it, we'd actually probably be building houses now. But it's going to take us another 6 months to even get to a summit where, and if they do what they did on the last one, they say yes, 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 and then row back by the time it gets to policy. This at the moment is fundamentally frustrating the whole of our market. And I don't know how we get the message across to them to go, just give us a decision and get on with it, because what we've done now is, it feels like, and they've done it with the mayorals, they're kicking everything to try and get it into what they would class as a second term, and they're gambling at that point. And in the meantime, they're gambling with our livelihoods.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I mean, an MPPF doesn't get written overnight, and I think the officials have worked really hard, but there have been disagreements potentially between officials and ministers, which has slowed down the publication of the draft. But yeah, I mean, we consistently say that all of the industry needs is sort of certainty, to be honest. And by like drip feeding planning reform, it's just creating a level of uncertainty which isn't helpful. And like, I love planning, obviously, but even I'm saying that maybe enough is enough at this point. We just sort of stick rather than twist. It
just feels like that it's death by 1,000 cuts. If they keep asking us a question and keep asking 200 questions and 200 sub questions, we're all going to give up at one point and just going to go, oh, do what you want, because I can't. I don't think I'm going to. I'm happy to jump on what the HBF do as a general answer this time, but I'm not answering this one. I've given too much time to the MPPF's consultations before. I've got business I need to run, and this is just another frustration more than anything else. So, thank you for listening, Catherine. Anyway.
Catherine, just on that, I've got Linda, who works alongside Anna, who was an MP. Her husband's a Lord. Linda, what can SME house builders do? Because clearly, it's proving painful, this planning side of things. What can we actually do in a positive way to embarrass government into doing the right thing and to moving things at speed? Because speed, if we don't move fast, we won't have the small number of SME house builders that we've now got around. So, Linda, is there anything you can ask and request of everybody to support getting things moving? Because the HBF is a voice, but ultimately 500 SME voices should be able to get the government to stand up and listen.
Well, you're doing the right thing by banding together and discussing, and obviously, deciding where the issues are, and obviously use this forum and all the information that we've had today. But you also need to lobby your own MPs, because they'll be thinking about their seats, which could be up for grabs sooner rather than later. Who knows?
I agree, absolutely.
And so, there's nothing like knowing that you might be getting your P45 or whatever sooner than you expected. That might make them. I mean, sorry, not all MPs are worried about their seats, but obviously, unless you tell them, they don't know. And this is so specialised and intricate. Unless they're into it, like Sarah Gibson or Mike Reeder, or somebody who's really into this area, or Sarah Edwards, they won't really necessarily know it's an issue. You've got to make sure you tell them, which is why through the APG, we're always trying to get ways of you connecting with your own MPs or MPs in the areas where you're building, to kind of focus on that and to brief them, which we can do as well. So there's nothing like getting to people whose, let's face it, jobs may depend upon it. And some of them will be willing to do it anyway, but that's got to be the best way. And even possibly counsellors, they're less specialised generally, but them as well, really, wherever you can.
I think, Linda, thank you for that. And I only raise that because obviously with my role with the APPG for SME Housebuilders, I think we were looking at some templates that rather than the SMEs think, oh my gosh, I've got to write a letter MP, we can set some templates. You can tweak it, each and every one of you. But if you start sending that and there's a flurry coming through, it's going to be neutral, if not positive, because it will be raising the profile. So I think we've got that, Anna, haven't we, that we can share with everybody, and maybe after this call we can send that out, because this we've got to do something. And sometimes it can seem, well, what's the point? And Mark White, you put so much into the SME market, and I get that, but I guess if we don't do anything, things will continue. There's a chance that we can make a difference. And it does feel like we've made some small improvements, and then suddenly it's pushed back a bit. So the other thing I'll share, and I can see Helena, who's our communications director for Stark, you're on the call, Helena. There's some things that we're looking to do, not politically wise, but to raise the profile and in significance of importance of SME Housebuilders. Helena, before I hand over to Krista Hammond from Bow Properties and then John Anderson, is there anything, Helena, from your position as an executive within Stark UK that you say, we're obviously going to be working closely together to champion the interests of SMEs, but from what you've listened to, is there anything words that you would give from your expertise?
Thank you, Edwin. Look, it's very clear that the whole system is broken, let's face it. And I think if we all had a clean sheet of paper and design what the system needed to look like and then reverse engineer back to where we are today, I think we would probably identify some key things that actually would kind of accelerate us to a much healthier, sustainable industry for all of us on this call. So that's the first thing. So in that light, given that, as you say, Stark has to take a politically neutral position, we can still work through to kind of raise the issues and campaign and fight for the issues that we know need to be resolved. So actually, I would be asking our friends on this call today to come through to me and identify what, in your words, what are the 3 to 5 biggest things that you would like us to create a campaign and fight for, in parallel to all the good work that obviously Edwin, Anna, and the team here on this call are doing today. What else can we do? Then add the additional building materials perspective too. So in that regard, we are start warming up slowly, more quickly, as it were, Edwin, as you know, making sure we're bringing collective voice to our SME house builders, and we have a number of testimonials we're bringing through to raise the issues, to put a highlight on the issues. But I do think there's something else we could do to get some key issues raised in Parliament. For example, why wouldn't we get a petition out there in some shape or form? We could quite easily gather together 10,000 signatures, which Linda will know means that we would then get a debate actually in Parliament and actually shift some other things. So if you could reach out to me with those 3 to 5 things collectively, I'll find a way to build out an additional campaign focus that will just tackle this systemically. But the system's broken. I think AI, and watching the chat here, AI clearly has a role to play in a rules-based system, frankly, just flush through some of the challenges that I know I've spoken to, for example, Mike Pratt before on a number of these things. We just kind of cut through the proverbial and just get our industry back into an even keel again. But that's probably enough for today, Edwin.
No, Helena, really grateful. And Helena's working with the King's Foundation as well, and involved with the APPG as one of our senior execs. So delighted that you're on the call, Helena, and I know you want to support me in championing this cause. So fantastic.
Absolutely.
Christopher Hammond, Bow Properties. Christopher, I'm seeing you later on this week as well, my friend. Over to you.
Thanks, Edwin. Catherine, sorry, just specifically on the well-connected train or tram stations, the definition of near, I think Matthew Pennycook was speaking about like about 800 meters, but again, like, is there, any scope to push that? Because 800 meters doesn't really get you that far in more rural areas that might have well-connected train or tram stations.
Yeah, so in the draft that I reviewed in September, which was like a relatively early draft, it actually had 800 meters in the draft, and they've removed that, I think, because to allow that flexibility. We're also going to be making the point within our consultation response that they need to take into account cycling, because obviously, a number of people, particularly commuters, etc., are able to cycle to a station, which will mean that a site can still be considered sustainable. I didn't touch on this, but one of the other concerning elements in the draft is reference to the DFT connectivity tool, which is a new system, like mapping system, launched by Department of Transport that assesses effectively the sustainability of a site, which could be good, but there are some issues with the tool, and the fact that it's referenced in the NPPF causes some concern. But I think, in short, I think there is flex on that 800 meters, but I think it's down to the applicant to demonstrate that their proposals are sustainable and that the station, whether that be train or tram, whatever, is easily accessible.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, just to follow up, you mentioned about the high value travel to work area. Is that like a published list, or is that again sort of subjective?
Yeah, so this is another flaw. I feel like this is like really negative, but so the top 60 travel to work areas is it's a gross value added sort of calculation, and it is a publicly accessible document. But what we and a lot of others are asking for is that government just publish the list of what stations fall within that 60, because it saves you time as an applicant trying to work out whether a station is within that, and also time as a councillor when determining an application. Just cuts loads of stuff out of the application itself, the committee report, etc., if it's all just on a published list. The reluctance of government to do that is because there is an ability for stations to be added to that list if Network Rail commit to some sort of service improvements or upgrades. But I mean, if you've ever tried to work with Network Rail, you know that it's nigh on impossible to get anything out of them. So the chances of like a plethora of stations being added to that list is, unlikely, and they could just commit to a 12-month sort of review of the list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. We've gone over a little bit of time. I think that was an incredible session. It has been recorded. I think you've kindly agreed that we can share your presentation, which we'll do on the R&B Housebuilder Forum website. I know I've already had John Anderson, who's had to jump off, so he can't ask his question, but he's asked for your presentation. But he did want to express that he thought it was, beautifully delivered and some great stuff, challenging stuff. But I think, what Helena's mentioned in terms of sending the stuff through to her, we are doing our bit at Stark to champion the interests of SME house builders. Linda's mentioned some great stuff about MPs. I think what we'll do, Anna, is we will drop everybody a line requesting that, you've got to help us to help you. And the ambitions of the R&B Housebuilder Forum is it's your forum. It's not ours, it's your forum. And if we can get 500 members, as I said, we can walk with some force into number 10. Does it mean we're going to change things? Am I promising that? No, but it's going to be better than just letting SMEs wither away because nobody is realising the implications 3-4 years down the line when 95% of all homes are built by 5 national house builders, which none of us would want to see. One, because of our own livelihoods, but also because it's not probably the country and society that we want, where we're getting standard product being built everywhere up and down the country. So I think it's incumbent upon everybody on this call to do their bit. We're trying to do our bit. We're trying to represent you as well as we can. And I urge you all to take the time, and we'll even make it easier for you by maybe giving you some templates, and then you can tweak the letters that go to MPs, because it saves you having to think about how to draft something to an MP. And I think that will hopefully help. And we'll be sending those notes out so we can do that as well. Is there anything, Anna, that you wanted to say before we bring things to a close, apart to thank everybody for coming on the call, for making this forum what it is? We'll be sharing more about our founding sponsors of the website that are joining us. That's Velux, Imperial and Hans Grohe. We're absolutely thrilled. All 3 businesses still have family members within the business. So we have hand-picked those 3 founding sponsors, all manufacturers committed to SME house builders. So I think that probably shows the values and the mission of what we're doing. We're aligning ourselves to organisations that are passionate behind SME house builders. So I'm delighted to have those 3 founding sponsors supporting us with the website. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next forum. I think we've got the Bank of England on one, which is brilliant. I mean, we normally get well over 100 for the Bank of England, but we've got some other important guest speakers. And what we're probably going to try to do, because Anna's professionalising and Aaron is me, is we'll probably have a programme of the dates for the year of the different guest speakers, so that you can plug them all into your diaries. Because I know some of you said, look, Ed, wish I was on there, but X, Y, and Z. But the other thing we're going to be doing is recording these calls so that it gives you the opportunity on the website to access them afterwards in the presentations. So unless there's any other questions, thank you for joining the call. Let's make a difference together in terms of the SME market and championing it on behalf of everybody that's on the call. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week. Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Cheers.